Oh.
I'm not talking about parenthood at this deep for ages.
Lottie, why were you interested in a fitness and thinking chat?
Well, you got me thinking the other week when we had a chat at a friend's wedding. Yeah, I think we're just general catch up, but you asked me how I was. And I've actually had a discussion with a very close friend recently about how, for the first time in my adult life, I feel like I'm not actively working towards anything at the moment.
Yeah.
And it feels really alien to me.
Yeah.
And when I first realised that, and this was only in March time, so a few months ago, and we'd come back off a massive holiday that had taken lots of planning and preparation. We came back and I sort of thought, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. It was back into the swing of work and doing the nursery run and, you know, just general householdy bits, and everything's fine, but it almost felt like there was something missing because I wasn't...
Like striving.
Yeah. But it also didn't feel like there was anything missing. So I was a bit... And I said to my friend, I feel like I haven't got any direction at the moment. And she said to me, well, don't you think after the past 2-3 years of chaos that you've had, do you not think now is just the time to sit and enjoy it? And that was such a moment for me that I thought, oh, maybe you're right. Maybe I should just be enjoying it. And I'm still sort of not fighting with it, but I do still sometimes think there will be direction, there will be movement, and there will be change, and that's fine. But I don't think we have to be doing that all the time in order to be living a lovely life.
No.
So, I don't know. I just think there's a lot, especially on social media and wherever else now, that everyone's obsessed with taking over the world, it feels like. And I don't feel the need, and that's okay. And also, there is something I feel at the moment is that I don't feel like I need to prove anything to anyone. And I think, especially in early adulthood, that's a big thing that we all feel. Well, maybe we don't all feel, but I certainly did. And, you know, you're getting your career off the ground and making sure you're doing this person proud and that person proud and making sure you're living up to your potential and blah, blah, blah. I mean, in my late teens especially, I was convinced I never wanted kids. That didn't appeal. I thought, no, I'd rather be the sort of person that could fly out of the country 4 times a year and, you know, not have that kind of restriction. And then I met Jake, and pretty quickly the idea of a marriage and kids felt right. And that's not right for everyone. But it was just interesting to me that, I mean, it sounds really naff, doesn't it? But when you know, you know. And actually it did just feel right. And I have got friends that are in long-term stable relationships with a very similar lifestyle to us that have said they'll never get married. And I'm like, yeah, I agree, because there's no point in it really. But for us it felt right. And I can't even really tell you why. But I like that we've got a family name. And now that we've got a daughter to share that with, I don't know, it all just feels right.
Yeah.
It's not that I think that this is the life that everybody should have and want and strive towards either.
No. The way you described it to me at the wedding, and obviously a wedding is a great place to discuss this sort of feeling, was that you almost felt guilty for looking around. Yeah, and wondering if there should be more.
Especially because my daughter's not even 2 yet, and this is such a transformative time to witness the rapid change and development that she's going through. And everyone goes on at you about, oh, it all goes so quickly, you've got to treasure every single second. And absolutely there are elements of that I agree with. You can't treasure every minute of being a parent because some of it's hard. But yeah, because of that, I was thinking maybe I shouldn't be constantly striving for the next thing. Maybe I do just need to focus now on her and being mummy. But that can't be my entire identity either.
No, that feels like a proper conflict. There seems to be like this duality of being a parent and potentially being a mom. I think it was F. Scott Fitzgerald or Wilde, you'll often get quotes attributed to one of the two, that describe the idea of genius being able to hold 2 conflicting ideas in the mind at the same time. And you've got to be loving and caring while also being frustrated, sleep deprived, hungry, overfull, whatever emotions you might feel. What's that like, and how do you navigate that tension?
I mean, you've used the word duality, but I've described it sort of as a polarity, because parenthood is joyous, but it's overwhelming. It is fascinating sometimes and boring sometimes. I mean, trying to entertain a 6-month-old, there's not a lot you can do. But, you know, you're with them all day. It's energizing, but it's exhausting. And I just think all those things do all exist at the same time, often all within the same day. And it's okay. No, everyone says there's nothing that can prepare you for parenthood. That first child, you know it's going to be hard because everyone tells you it's going to be hard. But no one, until you're in it, there is no way you can ever really imagine what it's like. And everyone's experience is so different. I all the time sit and say, oh, I don't know how single parents do it, but they just get on with it. You know, I don't know how people do it when their partner works away from home half the week, or, you know, all these things that I don't experience that they do. I can't imagine that because I'm not in it. And therefore I think it's also not my place to ever comment on it. You know, I can't stand it when you see people online saying, especially when you think about fitness when you're a parent, a lot of the time I see it from online PTs or whatever, when you're on TikTok or Instagram Reels and they're making comments on, oh, I help parents all the time, but they themselves aren't a parent. And I just think, you're not qualified. I don't care how understanding you think you are, you don't get it. And I don't think anyone can understand parenthood without being in it, really.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will send everyone questions ahead of us chatting, just so there's the opportunity to think on things, so we're not just making it up. You know, hopefully it feels free-flowing. Something that stood out for me, though, is that you sent questions back.
Yeah.
And one of them was basically around, would I be comfortable in PTing people around pregnancy and postpartum? I'm not qualified.
Yeah.
And I think that up until maybe like the first 3 months, sure. And maybe 6 months after giving birth, I'll be happy to maybe come back in and have the conversation. But there are people who will train for years to understand what happens to a person's body as it goes through pregnancy.
Yeah.
And who will understand the moments when, you know, we expect maybe the abs to separate, pelvis or pelvic floor to maybe weaken, when lifting overhead becomes a terrible idea.
Yeah.
You know, I know that these are all the risks.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say broad strokes that I would take people on when there are experts there. And I think that's when I would say, look, if you want somebody who's already established, that's not me, go see them. But if you've been through it and you've got experience of it, so if you were to ask me, for instance, I know that you've been through it, and that's hopefully what we're going to come on to. And I know that you've got the experience of your body changing. You know how strong you are. You know when you've been impacted in ways that I won't know. And if you just said to me, Jack, could you keep me accountable to what I like to do? And maybe tell me when I'm doing too much or pull back. Yeah. That's maybe where I can step in, but that would be more as a coach rather than as a qualified PT or practitioner.
Yeah, yeah. So when you were getting your personal training qualifications, was there anything included in that, in your training and learning, that had anything to do with pregnant bodies?
Basically, what I've laid out there is that there will be a cut-off, and I think maybe you could go into second trimester based on generic advice, but I just don't necessarily agree with it. I think there's an insurance aspect to it because there is a pathway. You know, there's an internationally recognised qualification that you can get. Yeah. And that's like getting your bachelor's, your master's. You might see that as money making. I see it as actually, no, if you want to work with a special population, then specialise. Yeah. I think that makes perfect sense. And to be recognised as having that qualification, it shows that you've cared for and you're interested in what you do. It's not a population that I'm not interested in. It's just I've gone down more the strength and conditioning route, and you know, it's a different direction for me. So you have basic guidance up until this point, and then I think it's probably viewed more as an injury or as something that you can't manage than as an augmented state or a different way of being, if that makes sense. And elderly populations are also described, elderly folk are described as a special population. Yeah. And because to me that just seems illogical, doesn't it? Because as a personal trainer, again, depending on the demographic of your clients, any one of, from what I understand of the type of people that you train, any one of them could come to you tomorrow and say, oh, Jack, I'm pregnant. What are we going to do? Yeah. And then what? And then what? I would do my best to understand what they need. And I would obviously need to go and do some reading. Yeah. And I'll apply reading to their experience. But there will be a point where I'll have to say, look, if you want to keep on training, either chat to somebody who's been through it, like you. Yeah. Or maybe I can look for a specialist for them. And I've referred people to disordered eating clinics, to therapists, to kind of more mental health care. So I know that I'm not qualified for everything. I've got a generic qualification. Yeah. When it comes to something unique or specialised, then there will be people who are qualified for that. And that's exactly what I did, is look for a specialist. And I started looking before I got pregnant. We were going through fertility treatment and the drugs took a huge toll on me and I felt like garbage. So I was training regularly in the gym
started the treatment, quite soon my strength disappeared. I didn't want to eat. I felt like shit. And so I didn't want to go to the gym, didn't have the energy. I thought, I can't do it. And then I thought, but then I don't want to then hopefully get pregnant and then be out of the gym for so long that I would then feel fear of getting back into it. Also, when you've worked so hard to get a pregnancy, you desperately want to do the right thing and don't want to jeopardize it. I mean, I'm sure most people feel like that, even if it's not quite as planned as mine was. But yeah, so at that point I thought, no, let's find somebody now. And then as soon as I get a positive test, if I do, I can tell that person and we can deal with it. So I actually found somebody with the qualification that you've mentioned, and immediately felt better. So I just think it's a shame though that I had to put in all that effort and the access to safe coaching during pregnancy isn't really there.
No.
And the information when you look online are like two ends of a spectrum, where it's either you can still be deadlifting 5 times your body weight up until the day you give birth, it's fine, or you really should stop everything and sit in bed for 8 months.
Yep.
And so it was just like, what is the right thing to do? And even when you chat to a midwife, they're very cautious with what they tell you, I've noticed. Well, the general advice is if you've been training, you can probably continue that until you feel like you can't.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So it's all my fault then, if anything is to go wrong. And that's how I felt. So I felt really secure in, the coach that I found. I still train with her to this day, and she's brilliant. But yeah, I just wish it wasn't so difficult to find people. I mean, half of the population could get pregnant. So yeah, why isn't it more easy?
With your interest in fitness, losing your strength, fertility treatment, finding your courage, finding your strength again, could you maybe talk us through that journey?
Yeah, so I think maybe you can correct me on this, but like most people, I started at the gym however many years ago now for aesthetic reasons. After lockdown, I realised that I'd been sat on my backside for how long eating a lot of garlic bread. And I thought, things suddenly look a bit different in the mirror. So I joined Pure Gym, got a PT pretty much straight away because I just felt clueless. And it was very much training for aesthetics, which was fine. Since then, building my confidence, training on my own, doing different types of training, some functional bits. It was then when the fertility treatment started that I found this coach, specifically because she was, a mummy PT or a pregnancy PT or whatever. And it was very interesting to not only learn about how my own body was changing through how it felt during pregnancy, and I suppose the research I was doing myself, because in that first bit of pregnancy, there is such a lot going on the inside. But apart from feeling really tired and maybe sick, if you experience that, there's no change yet. You go for that first scan at 12 weeks, and they're showing you somebody in there doing somersaults and you can't feel it yet, and that's bizarre. So yeah, you feel all out of sorts in the beginning, for some people. Again, every pregnancy is wildly different, but it was nice to have that coach that would say, okay, well, we're now not going to be doing really heavy barbell hip thrusts because we don't want to be putting that amount of weight over that area. I was like, oh yeah, seems kind of obvious, but because nothing felt any different, it was those sorts of things that it was nice to be brought to my attention. Like you mentioned before, she said at some point, and the point for everybody during their pregnancy is different, overhead movements are going to make you feel really bad and you could pass out. And so, we're going to have to really monitor how you're feeling doing any sorts of overhead movements and stop when it's right for you. So it was just really interesting to have somebody that felt really safe and knowledgeable coach me through all of that. I was in the gym the same week I gave birth in the end. I'm not doing anything hugely crazy. In fact, my husband laughed at me because I remember going down that grass track in Pure Gym in the city centre with no dumbbells in my hands, but doing walking lunges. And I got to the end of this track and I said to Jake, bloody hell, why is that so hard? I've got no dumbbells. And obviously for a while I'd been experiencing getting out of breath very quickly because baby's squishing all your organs up. And he looked at me and he said, babe, you are 13 kilos heavier than you were a few months ago. Oh yeah. So I just, you kind of just forget, because as well, the change in your body can be nothing for a while, then hugely rapid for a couple of weeks, and then nothing for a while again. It's not necessarily a very steady increase towards the end.
No.
It's just, it's a crazy time to go through.
Your identity through that time though, so you were from my perspective, like, as you say, a little bit functional, a little bit aesthetics, but like fit. Like you knew what you wanted, and strength seemed to be an aspect of your personality. So, you know, earlier on, you've already described that feeling of weakness. And then your body changing and recognizing, you know, when Jake says to you that you're 13 kilos heavier, that actually your body is completely different.
Yeah.
What's your sense of self like through that? Did your kind of identity change as a result of the feeling of weakness, for one? And then were you kinder to yourself when you recognized that actually, you know, you were moving and eating for two? Like, does that have an impact on how you see the world?
I think, especially because we'd put so much time and effort and money into getting that pregnancy, as my body was changing and I was feeling all kinds of different, I always had, but there's a purpose. And also, there's an end point. And I think a lot of that made it easier was, okay, yeah, but once this baby's out of me, again, it will be a new thing to navigate, but you kind of, you know, it's only for a set amount of time. So yes, it's weird and it can be frustrating when you can't get off the sofa yourself. But everything felt like it was for a reason now. Okay. And I'd worked so hard to get it that actually during pregnancy at least, postpartum's a whole different story, but during pregnancy, I actually didn't mind when my body felt weak or I was sat crying in Asda car park because I didn't know what I wanted to eat or whatever, because it's fine, like it's all for a reason, and I, you know, really wanted this, and I did still really want it, and it was actually all really exciting. Yeah. But I will say I also had quite a nice pregnancy. The journey to get there, no, but my pregnancy itself, I didn't have sickness. I had very little. I had a bit of round ligament pain for a while, but apart from that, it was a pretty easy breezy pregnancy. So perhaps it's very different for people that don't have it so easy as well. I think that can give you feelings of frustration, but that's exactly what I wanted my body to achieve, and it had achieved it.
There's something to be said for structure and for goal setting, because then you can accept the journey. You kind of fall in love with the journey as much as the end point.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think so. And I suppose it ties into what we were saying before about how at the moment I'm not working towards anything. Yeah. You know, and maybe that's why it's making me feel a bit strange.
Did you know that each episode of Fitness and Thinking takes about 10 hours to put together, from getting in touch with the guests to hosting the conversation to editing and then promoting? And so far, there is not any sponsorship or funding going into it. It is just time and energy from yours truly. And I feel very fortunate to do it. But it only grows if people engage with it. And it could be to say that you dislike something as much as liking something. Even just leaving a thumbs up is better than no interaction at all. And subscribing is one of the biggest things you can do, so you don't miss out on all of the experts, practitioners, and generally great people that I'm lucky enough to get to chat to most weeks that we do this. So fertility treatment to me is a topic that is completely new.
Okay.
You know, like my friends, I've got 2 parents kind of in the university group, and they've not really discussed how they got there.
Okay.
When you describe it, and you know, it's one of the things that you highlighted in our prep, what was it that you went through and what did it involve? And you talk about the drugs having an impact on you.
Yeah.
What were the drugs? Can you go into that?
Yeah,
maybe?
of course. And I'm glad you asked, actually, because when I was going through it, I could find very little information, but very little experience discussed online, apart from in these very overwhelming forums where people then start to use jargon words and acronyms for things. And there are so many different types of fertility treatment that when you're told you're probably going to need it, so then naturally you come home, you start having a search around online, you think, bloody hell. And then because the path is unknown in the beginning, that it was more upsetting, because it wasn't just like, oh, it's okay because you've got a problem and this is what's going to fix it. It's not as simple as that. But it all started when we decided to come off contraception, because we weren't necessarily ready to be parents in that moment, but the contraception that I was on, which was the depot injection, the nurse had repeatedly told me, when you choose to stop having that injection, it can take your body like up to a year sometimes to re-regulate, get your cycle back before you can then conceive. So we'd had the discussion of, well, if it could take that long, let's think ahead and come off it. When I was on the injection, I had no periods at all. So obviously no chance of getting pregnant. And I thought, right, well, when that period returns and it seems regular, we'll know that we should be, you know, ready to start trying. About 6 months down the line, no sign of any period. And my experience of my menstrual cycle as a younger woman before I'd gone on contraception was here, there and everywhere. So they just hand you the pill.
All right.
that'll regulate it.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew deep down that something wasn't right. I thought, so I rang the GP. They got me in with the nurse and she said, you've got to give it longer. Let your body figure this out. You've not had periods since you were 18 or whatever. I was like, yeah, true. Another 6 months goes by, nothing. It's now been a year. Phone the GP again. And they said, okay, we'll put you in for a phone call with the GP rather than a nurse. And when that phone call came through, actually, I picked up the phone and it was a man's voice. I thought, oh, here we go. This is going to be no help. He was amazing. Shout out Dr. Osborne. Because instantly when I explained the situation, he said, I barely gave him time to breathe. I said, this is what's going on and this is what's happening and it's not good enough, it's not right and no one's listening and I want blood tests, I want this, I want that. And he said, yeah, you're right. I went, oh. So he got me in for blood tests that week. And then he said, as soon as those bloods have come back, I'd like you to come in for a physical exam as well. And I'd just like to check that there's nothing untoward that I can see. Great. So I went for my bloods. They came back surprisingly quickly and I went in for the physical, which was a lot like a smear. And he said, okay, from what I can see, there's nothing wrong, but there are markers in your bloods that suggest polycystic ovarian syndrome or PCOS. I said, okay. And the way they diagnose that is there's a kind of checklist and I think you only have to tick 2 or 3 of the things on that list for them to give you a diagnosis.
Right.
And they're quite varied symptoms, but my lack of periods, a bit of acne and something in my bloods, which I'd love to be able to tell you, was slightly higher than normal. And he said, so that's what I can diagnose you with. He says, because you've got no cycle yet, it's looking like you're probably going to need fertility treatment. So I burst into tears. Even though I knew it, I knew that news was coming. And he said, so what happens now is I'll refer you on to gynecology. They'll see you and figure out where to go from here and figure out why you're not having a cycle, because that will determine what type of treatment they give you. Okay, how long is the wait for that? To even be seen, probably at least 10 months.
Right.
At this point, I've been off contraception for a year already. We'd decided we wanted a pregnancy and it's just, I felt really let down. So we decided to go private. And again, I'm in the fortunate position that we could do that. Found a private hospital in Sheffield and I think they got me in 4 days later.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so that to me was a no-brainer. They did an internal scan of my ovaries and they were, I think his words were, the most polycystic I've ever seen. And if you don't know, an ovary is meant to look like it has a handful of follicles, maybe 4 or 5, and they just look like little white dots in your ovary. And while he was doing this scan, which is internal, so quite close for comfort, but he turned the screen around and said, look. And I was looking at what looked like a ball of sweet corn. That's what I explain it to people as. I said, okay. And I thought, I don't know what I'm looking at. I said, what's it supposed to look like?
Yeah.
He was like, well, not that. And he was the one who explained there should only be really 4 or 5 of those sort of sacs. And there were, too many to count.
Okay.
I went, oh, right. He said, yeah, it's no wonder you're not having a cycle because you are not ovulating. So generally, one of those follicles each month expands and matures, releases an egg. He says there's no space for any of them to expand enough for that to happen. He said the positive thing is there are loads of eggs in there. So you've got brilliant egg reserve. They just can't get anywhere. Okay. So the first course of action was a drug called clomiphene or Clomid. And it's supposed to stimulate ovulation, but you have to take it on day 2 or 3, I can't remember now, of your period. I don't have periods. Yeah. So drug number 1 was to give me a fake period or a withdrawal bleed. On day whatever it was of that bleed, you start taking the clomiphene. You start on the lowest dose and we'll see what happens. So I had to take the lowest dose. And actually throughout all that, apart from the annoyance of having to take all these drugs, I don't remember there being many side effects. And then again, I can't remember all the timescales for it, but so many days or weeks later, they get you in, scan your ovaries again to see if any of them have grown. Nothing. We've got to double the dose. Okay. But then that was like another month later because you can't immediately have another bleed again. So everything is just taking forever. I did 3 rounds of that drug, upping the dose every time, nothing. So then it was to move on to an injectable drug and similar. So I had to give myself a bleed and then on days, I want to say it was 3 to 7, it was an injection every day, which my husband was an amazing nurse and did that for me every day in my stomach. And at that point, we went in for the scan and there were 2 big fat follicles. and they were measuring really nicely. So the nurse that did that scan said, okay, these are looking good to go. We now need to give you another injection to have, I think it was the next day, at a very specific time, and that should stimulate the actual release of that egg. So they call it the trigger shot, and then an exact number of hours after you have the trigger shot, you can either try to get pregnant the traditional way, or they can do an artificial insemination, which we chose to do because I'd come so far that I thought, no, I'm taking every chance possible. Yeah. Because there were 2 follicles, we did have to actually sign some paperwork that said there's a very high chance of twins. So there was that in the back of our minds as well. But we had the trigger shot and we had the artificial insemination, and then exactly 2 weeks after that, they get you in for a blood test to see if you're pregnant. And 2 weeks later, I felt shocking. I had the worst cramps, my boobs hurt, I was tired, and I said to Jake, I've got a period coming. This is definitely PMS. It's not worked. Never mind. Because we knew we could try this process another 2 times. But I went for the blood test and had a phone call that afternoon with the results. And she said, oh, congratulations. And we both went, and then I very rudely said, fuck off, are you sure? Because I couldn't believe it. I was convinced, you know. So yeah, bizarre. But because of going through all that, then we had an earlier scan at 7 weeks. And it was at that point they could tell how many babies were in there. Yeah. And it was only 1, which actually after all that I was really relieved about. But yeah, that was crazy. So at 7 weeks I'd gone in and they, again, internal scan, and there's a tiny little fluttering thing on the screen. And she said, that's a heartbeat. And the rest is history. It was magic. So actually, the first time they got me to ovulate, I fell pregnant.
Incredible.
Incredible. Wow. Amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would have no idea about that journey.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people would either until, as you say, you go through it, you know?
And everyone assumes IVF. So what we had was actually called a stimulated IUI, which is an intrauterine insemination. And the stimulated bit means all the injections to stimulate the ovulation to start with. So if that hadn't have worked, we would have then moved on to IVF, which is a whole other ball game, and it sounds incredibly stressful. So I'm really fortunate we didn't have to go through that. Crazy that they could do that. Absolutely amazing.
Implications of being barren, of not being able to bear children. And it often feels, reading through, you know, centuries of society, Victorian society into Edwardian, into modern day, that the onus of kids will fall on the woman, the female body, the one able to bear the child, rather than necessarily, you know, the man being impotent, for instance. And that notion of, it came up recently in the microplastics documentary.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was really interesting. There were 6 couples trying to get pregnant, and the men were impotent, but the doctors were still talking to the women as if they weren't fertile.
And they knew that the men were impotent.
The way it's worded in the documentary, I wonder if people can support me on this one, because it was very interesting. It was like, no, the men can't produce quality sperm. Why are we... It's worth a look. And I might have misinterpreted that. But all the way through from, you know, like 1850 to 2025 when this documentary was filmed, I'm just thinking, what's going on here? You know, so that is a separate topic, but centuries of people being told that they're not good enough, or, you know, they'll never be able to do that.
And even the word barren.
Barren's such a terrible word.
Awful.
And it might not have been the case. It might be, no, actually you've got loads of eggs, it's just they can't get out.
Yeah.
That's a very different circumstance.
Yeah, and, you know, and my womb was perfectly healthy.
Yeah. It
was just this one thing that they needed to overcome, and then the rest, you know, was all bad. But I remember that feeling of this one thing that you feel like your body should be able to do, and it can't. And it shouldn't be this way at all, but your identity as a woman just feels all off. It's just this one biological thing I'm supposed to be able to reproduce. What did I do to deserve that? You know, you go down that route. And you know, why you've the guilt, because actually during our treatment they did test Jake's sperm as well, because they thought, well, you can't put all this effort in, even though we know that I have an issue, because if his sperm isn't quality enough, like you say, then we've got that as well. But when that came back positive, I actually almost felt annoyed, because now it's all my fault. This whole thing we're going through is all, and he never ever put that on me, but that is, you know, what happened in my head. And yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah, for sure. There's so much in this. I wonder also, this is potentially a spicy thing to say, Do you feel that, given the way that you felt and the frustration there and the onus was on you, but also you've described this process as magic, that maybe we think as humans that we're entitled to have kids, that we're entitled to be parents at times? Because I know for me, I've got no drive to be a parent, and the thought of it actually scares me for reasons that are very like small and close to me, and then much bigger ones, you know. And I think maybe I could use the bigger ones to justify not, when actually it's I would be scared as a dad.
Yeah.
I would be scared if they fell over in the living room while I was cooking something.
Yeah.
I would be scared of the mistakes I would make. They're kind of the things that stop me, you know.
It's interesting about that right to be a parent, because another thing I felt, which I've told people close to me, and I suppose this is a much more public place to say it, but when I knew that I wasn't able to get pregnant on my own, or not on my own, but without medical help, and then when we were going through the treatment, seeing people that had had whoopsie pregnancies pissed me off. And then seeing people that I felt didn't deserve to be parents getting pregnant, or, you know, being surrounded by multiple children, I thought, what the fuck? I'm in this, you know, happy, stable, strong marriage in a gorgeous home. I could give a child such an incredible life. You know, why is the universe doing this? And it's just the way of the world, isn't it? And I think it's interesting when people try and give you advice when you're going through things like this. And it's a lot of, it'll happen when it's supposed to. That's what I was told while we were waiting to start treatment. And I actually said to people, no, it won't. It can't happen. Stop saying that. It'll happen when the drugs work. And they were just trying to be, you know, positive and helpful, but it was really unhelpful. I had one religious friend who said to me, God only gives you what you can handle. Got slapped her in the face.
Yeah.
And for her, that's so comforting. For me, it wasn't. And until that point, I'd been very much the believer of everything happens for a reason, fate will do its thing. Actually, now I'm more of the mind of actually life's a bit shit sometimes. And that's okay. As long as you've got people around you that can help through it, it's fine. But, you know, shit things happen to good people. And sometimes good things happen to shit people. It's just the way of the world.
Yeah. I think if it can help your point to land, which I think is important and very honest, I will have had frustrations with, say, dating or partners, or, you know, looking around at people thinking, God, like, what is it? Like, is there something that I'm missing about this person or this relationship? You know, like, I've got this and this, I've got these life experiences, I've done this, I can speak languages, I can cook things, I can introduce you to ideas. And, you know, I'm just walking around a park by myself on a Saturday. Like, yeah,
I know. And it's that feeling of you have the right, or that you should, or that you do deserve something. And maybe you do, but life's a bit shit sometimes. It's okay.
Yeah.
I think I've spoken a lot about pre-pregnancy.
Yeah.
Which is quite unique to me. Post-pregnancy.
Yeah. So it's a different experience.
It is, and it's more relevant to anyone that's been pregnant, I suppose, whether they've had the child or not.
Go on.
So we talked about training during pregnancy, why I did it, how, you know, navigating the changes of your body, being stared at in the gym like I was an alien for walking around with my big old bump. But I said that it was kind of, for me, okay, because it felt like there was a reason. My body was changing for a reason. It was a reason I tried really hard for and I was really excited by. When I'd had my daughter, first of all, those first 2 weeks of being a parent, crazy. You don't know if it's day or night. You have no idea if it's been 5 minutes or 5 days since you last ate something. Like, it's absolutely craziness. And not only are you navigating having this thing that you now need to keep alive and look after and love, but at that point, your body is doing all these weird things and it doesn't feel like there's a reason anymore. So then it becomes frustrating. And you're bleeding for weeks and weeks and weeks. Depending on how you've had the baby, you're healing all different parts of your body. I remember the first day after we brought the baby home and we had some family arrive to come and see us. And I was making my way down the stairs and this person walked through the door and said, oh my God, did you have a C-section? Because I was walking really slowly. I said, no, but I feel like I've been hit by a train. It was head to toe weakness and pain in some ways and exhaustion. And I mean, it makes sense. Not only does the baby come out, but when that placenta comes out, have you ever seen a placenta?
It's a weird alien thing, isn't it?
So loads of people really can't stand it.
Yeah.
But the midwife said to us, do you want to see it? And I was like, yes, I'm fascinated by things like that. And it's huge. It's bigger than my baby.
Right.
And that's left that size of a wound inside you because it's attached to your womb wall, right? And so that's now come away. And so no wonder it's a whole lot of healing. So it does make sense. But again, for however long, millennia probably, you're expected to get on with it. And after a few weeks, Jake, my husband, went back to ice hockey training. And before he did, he said, are you sure you're going to be all right for a few hours? Yeah, I've got this. And he came home and he found me sat upstairs, baby in arms, feeding her, sobbing over her head. And he said, oh my God, are you okay? I'm so sorry I left you. And I was like, no, I'm fine. And part of it was just hormones. And I didn't want to say it to him at the time, but we have now had the discussion that I spent about an hour thinking, fuck you about my husband. Fuck you for not having to heal. Fuck you for being able to go out and play ice hockey. Fuck you. Well, I still felt really, really bad. And there's a massive shift as well when you move from being a pregnant person to being a postpartum person. And this is, I'm not poo-pooing on any member of my family or my husband, but there is a massive shift where when you're pregnant, everyone's looking after you. Make sure you sit down. Do you need a drink? Everyone's treating you like you're this little golden, because you are, you're carrying a life and everyone looks after you. Baby arrives, and my family and Jake did look after me very, very well, but now there's someone else that also needs looking after. And you don't have that level of care anymore. And you are now, for me anyway, I felt so much more vulnerable postpartum than I did pregnant. And it's just a really strange thing. I just missed being looked after. And it's funny for me to say all that now because actually at 3.5 weeks postpartum, I went back to my Latin dancing class. And for loads of people, like, what the hell are you doing? But I felt well enough. So actually it was okay. I was very tired, but it was okay. And then I kind of took my want of consulting the experts, like I had during pregnancy, into postpartum as well. So I went and saw a postpartum physio. Sometimes they call these things like a mummy MOT. And again, fortunate enough to be able to afford that because these things are expensive. But that was really interesting to me. We looked at ab separation, like you mentioned. We looked at pelvic floor health and all that jazz. And I think I was 6 weeks postpartum when I saw her. I think I saw her 3 times. And then around 11 weeks postpartum, I went back to my personal trainer and gradually started building my strength there again. Yeah. But it's just this whole, no one can prepare you for parenthood, but for me anyway, I felt like you were expected to get on with it. People talk to you about bouncing back, losing the baby weight, blah, 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 blah. And it's just the furthest thing from your mind at the start. And I almost found it offensive when people said to me, like, God, you look great. You don't look like you had a baby 9 weeks ago. Okay, thanks. Well, I still feel like shit, so fuck off. Stop commenting on my body at this point. Yeah. It was really, really frustrating. And then when people heard that I'd gone back to the gym or back to dancing, oh my God, you're killing it. It's amazing. And I thought, well, yeah, but also it's because I've been quite stubborn in wanting to treat my body well and make sure that it was as healthy as possible. And I don't know, maybe that came from having to go through fertility treatment first and wanting my body to do everything right. I'm not sure if maybe that's where it came from, but yeah, I would seek out all the help that I could get access to, and it was still really hard. A huge thing that was different to us, or for us, that a lot of other people don't experience, is that my husband had 6 months off work with me. And I would say that is the biggest thing that helped my postpartum recovery. Yeah. It meant that I could go dancing for a few hours while he was with the baby. I also didn't breastfeed. I tried, didn't work for us. And so that was a barrier to normal life that I didn't have, I suppose. Yeah. And so I just worry sometimes when people look at our experience and say, God, you two are an inspiration for parenthood. You know, you're still going to festivals and we've taken baby, we've gone without baby, we've still gone on brilliant holidays, and yeah, but it was planned for carefully. We've still made a shitload of sacrifices, but we love it and we've done it all for a reason. But it's not been easy. I don't like it when people say, God, you've had a really nice postpartum experience, because it bloody wasn't in the beginning. No. It was hard.
When you say that it's an insult for people to say, oh, don't you look great, and you make it look easy, would you want them to know how hard it is? Obviously, if they watch this, they might have more of an idea, but you know, like you go through your experience.
Yeah.
And I wonder sometimes when people ask questions, part of them wants to hear that it is difficult. Part of them wants to know that it's a struggle or that other people might have struggled like them.
Yeah.
So when they look across, and we know that comparison is the thief of joy,
Yeah.
and they see two people seemingly doing really well with it, they take it personally in a way that they shouldn't. I think there's often not this, I think Compassion's the term. Freudenfreude is something that I tried to get to catch on, but it hasn't happened yet. If Schadenfreude is the pleasure in the misfortune of others,
Yeah.
and Freude means joy, Freudenfreude would be the joy in the joy of others.
Okay.
And I think we struggle as Brits, or maybe as Europeans, or whatever it is, to have joy for other people's joy. And like, I think there are conflicting things going on here, but I don't think you necessarily want to go into conversations all the time and say how hard it was, because that's not societally normal or functional.
Yeah.
You know, it could be more normal, but it's not.
But we also talked earlier about what I called the polarity of parenthood, and it was really hard, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
And those two things did exist at the same time. See, it's funny because I would say there wasn't even a difference. Like, part of you might expect that it's people without children that will just comment on how you look or what you're doing, and people with children might understand it more. But actually, a lot of my friends with children, and again, it's all, I know it's coming from a really lovely place, but the way that they would say, like, God, you don't look like you've just had a baby. I just think, so? Because a lot of that's just going to be my genetics. Yes, I worked hard during my pregnancy. I was still meal prepping during my pregnancy, but that was because I was tired and didn't want to cook all the time. But it was never the aim of then to get back to pre-baby body.
It's an issue that sometimes people are boring, that people don't have chat.
Jack.
But is it, you know, like when we'll say that if you bring the weather up, you've got nothing else to talk about.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time in places like saunas or like changing rooms if I go into the gym and I'm there for, 6-7 hours in a day, and maybe I'll have PT, I'll have classes, I'll be in the sauna. So there'll be like 3 or 4 moments in a day where I'm dipping in and I'll hear generic conversation. It's so dull. Did you train today, mate? Yeah, just finished. Nice one, mate. Oh, it's windy outside, isn't it? Yeah, it is. And that's it. And that's all that people have sometimes. And I'm not knocking that. It's
That's
like
true.
saying hello.
Yeah.
It's checking in. It's an attempt to make contact and to be sociable.
Yeah.
But it's not interesting. And maybe when people give you what they perceive to be a compliment, and you're just actually like fatigued and not interested in thinking about something else because, like you say, it's not your goal, you know where it comes from.
Do you know, it's funny you've just said this as well, because something I noticed at the end of my pregnancy, like really close to the end, when I just wanted the baby out, very tired and fed up, and people would keep saying, well, how long till your due date? Oh, have you had any signs yet? And it used to really annoy me, because number one, I'm not going to be telling everyone the minute I go into labour. And number two, no, the baby's not here yet, or you'd have bloody known about it. And my mum said to me, people are trying to be, they're excited for you. Stop being a bitch. But I had no patience left at the end, and maybe that's a really similar thing, is when you don't have much patience in the beginning, you're sleep deprived, you're not sure when you last ate, everything still hurts, that maybe things were just rubbing me up the wrong way. But I still think there are more valuable things, even small talky things you can say without talking about what the mother's body looks like, and or asking how the baby is sleeping. Don't ask that. Just don't.
You got anything else to add to the list?
No, just send me some food, please. That's the best thing you can do for new parents. Send them something with a bit of nutrition in it.
There we go. I like that. I was thinking it's exactly the same as getting into a taxi, isn't it? And asking if they've been on long.
Been busy.
Been busy, yeah. I think it's just an attempt to connect, isn't it?
And I think people just don't like silence sometimes either. Well, I best pretend that I care.
There's something that has come up. I think you're great at talking about it. Jake's great at talking about it. Jake having 6 months paternity sounds uncommon.
Completely.
But for him, he described it to me as an opportunity to really get to love Viv, which was such a wonderful thing to hear.
Yeah.
But it suggested to me, it's just a suggestion, the notion that it might take time to love this thing that you've grown. Could you speak to that?
So, I remember panicking the minute I'd given birth, because they put this baby on your chest. And my mum talked about giving birth to me, and she said, the rush of joy and love that you get, and you just can't believe it, and blah, blah, blah. I didn't have that. it was more, my first thought was, oh bloody hell, I've done it. My labour was incredibly quick, and so that was a little bit scary. And so once it was done and this baby was plonked here, I thought, oh God, right, I've done it, thank God for that. And then I'm looking, thinking, oh, it's very red. It seems to have 5 fingers and toes. And Jake saying to me, oh, it's a girl, we didn't know what we were having. So we didn't know what we were having, and I'd always said that I didn't have a feeling either way. But when he said to me, oh, it's a girl, I said, are you sure? So I remember that being a little bit jarring, and all these things are happening. The adrenaline in your system is up here. And yeah, even afterwards, it was amazing, but she didn't feel like mine. It felt like, here's a thing to look after. And then that night, I stayed one night in the hospital, Jake had to go home, and I remember looking at her in like a little glass box that they lay in next to you, checking she was breathing. And she coughed up some gunk at one point, which is really normal, they just don't warn you about it. And having a bit of a panic because I just felt all this responsibility and I'm in loads of pain, and it was just really strange. And then I think it was on day 2 or 3 of being at home, Jake looked over at me and I was holding her and there were tears running down my face silently, and he said, are you okay? And I was like, I just love her so much. And it came out of nowhere, and from that minute, she was just my everything. Don't know if it was something to do with my hormone levels that brought that on, but Jake will quite openly say that it took him longer than that. It was a good few weeks before it felt, the feeling changed from here's a thing I've got to look after to here's my whole world. And there's obviously nothing wrong with that. And you know, the more people I've said that to, they've either gone, yeah, I had that, or like, oh my God, no, it was in that first second. And so it seems to just go one way or the other. Yeah. So yeah, but again, I wish people would warn you of these things.
For sure. And if you only have 2 weeks,
yes,
which is what I understand to be common,
yeah,
then that doesn't sound like enough time.
No, and I can only imagine coming back in from being at work to whoever's just given birth to your child needing a break and being exhausted, and the house looking like a bomb's gone off, and then and also here's this thing back that we have to look after now, and it must be really alien. And a couple of fathers have said to me that they have found that really tricky, finding that time, and it's taken a long time to get that bond with the child. And other people have said, you know what, generally mothers, like, I'm the default parent, he or she always wants me because dad's out at work all the time, so I'm the one that they're used to. And again, that's something we were just so lucky to get, because we've not really had any of that. Again, because I suppose also because I didn't directly breastfeed, we were both bottle feeding equally. There's never been, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are days that she wants daddy to put on her shoes and nobody else, but it's, yeah, not something massively experienced, which was nice. It means we could share the load much more easily. Yeah. But again, we didn't do anything special to have achieved that. I think it was just luck.
For you to put time and money into research, working with specialists, you said that you had this aim to become pregnant and to have a baby, very structured, strong sense of purpose. And I think as much as all of the optimizations that people might have, like their 3 a.m. morning routines and lux maxing and 3,900 grams of fibre a day and all of these random spurious things that people might get up to, if you don't have a purpose, you're probably not going to last too long.
Yeah.
You can have whatever routine, but the routine will fall apart when the purpose isn't there or falls apart. Yeah. And I think this is something that we've kind of drifted in and out of. Strong purpose leading up to Viv being born, and then kind of afterwards feeling like maybe you've got everything you need, but the direction's not there. Do you think the purpose has dropped out with that? Do you think there's been an identity shift? What do you think causes that? Is it that you're now on top of the mountain looking round, and because there's no obvious peak, that it's confusing almost because you've not got a point of reference? You're on the point of reference now. Or is it that it's a shift in identity that, like, how would you describe the experience? Because it is novel to me. I've not heard anyone describe it like you.
I think now, now that I've achieved all these things that I worked so hard and so long for, it's working out how to live and enjoy it, and I suppose find the optimal life within it. So instead of moving on or adding to it, how do we make it the best that it can be for everyone to enjoy it and there be balance? I almost hate the word optimal, but it does fit. It's working out what optimal looks like for you, I think. That's what I'm doing at the moment. And that comes with balance. And I think to be the best mum to Vivian and the best wife to Jake and the best daughter and family member and friend, and I also need time to just be Lottie. And finding that when you are a mother is tricky. I think it has to be planned in, and almost like following a training program in the gym, even when you're tired, go and do it. So there are certain nights of the week that Jake and I have allocated for ourselves. He'll go ice hockey training on one night, I'll go Latin dancing, I might go to the theatre, he might go and do DJing. Like, we have our own hobbies that are completely separate from one another. We never really cross into them, not because we're not interested or we're gatekeeping them away from each other. It's just nice to go and be ourselves outside of the family unit, and that, I think, is really nice. And it's something I noticed when we were pregnant. We were talking about how we would like to keep these things up and how we're going to manage that, because previously, if he'd gone ice hockey training, I might find a dance event on the same night. We can't do that now. Someone's got to stay in with the baby. So it's kind of figuring out the best way to be fair with it. And it might be some weeks that I'll get to the end of the working day and say to him, I don't think I can be arsed with dancing tonight. And he'll go, no, go. And every time I go, it fills my cup, and it was so worth it. And then the next day, I'm ready to be mum again, I'm ready to be wife again, or whatever it is. And having those moments regularly, I think, are so important, and having your partner support that and encourage it. And I know that can be really hard, especially, so I also didn't have any postpartum depression. If you're navigating that, you don't want to leave the house to go and be you, because, you know, your brain, that's the last thing you want. So I'm not saying that the way that we live and have worked this out as a family is what's going to work for everyone. And I think that's what's really, really hard. And I think sometimes if you don't have that many hobbies before, it can then be really hard to find time for yourself once the baby's here. Because I know of couples where one's really out and sociable and active and does X, Y, and Z throughout the week, and the other one, their hobbies are reading or whatever, and they're very home-based hobbies. And yet, if it's a home-based hobby, when you're a parent, I feel like it's
working from home, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not peace anymore, because actually you think, well, actually I'll better empty the dishwasher, or the baby's crying again, so I'll go and deal with them, so your book's been interrupted or whatever. I remember saying to somebody with a baby who was a few months old once, like, oh, I don't know what I'd do out of the house. I said, drive to a car park and sit there for an hour. I don't care, get out. I don't know if she ever did, but I just think go and be separate, and then you can come back. And yeah, it's that notion of filling your cup that I think is really, really important and gives you that balance.
For sure.
And then that's my optimal way of living.
Love that. Get up, get out. And I think change the space your head is in to change your headspace. So that could be very literally, if you can't get out of the house, at least go to a different room.
Yeah.
But ideally you get out of the four walls,
Yeah.
because your brain will do something different. You know, when you actually learn a topography of a place, so if you were to walk around this neighbourhood, there will be an imprint of this neighbourhood on your brain. And the further afield you go, the bigger that imprint potentially gets.
Yeah, you can't be on autopilot anymore.
No, it's tough to imagine it when you're just sat in the same place all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and the joy, I think it comes from spice and variety. And if Jake can tell you a story having been out and you've been in all day, then, you know, maybe that makes your day a little bit more exciting. So there's actually this kind of, it's almost like accruing resources. It's like birds coming back to the nest.
Yeah.
You know, you actually make it a stronger nest for leaving it.
The idea of a nest, I don't know if everybody experiences this, but there's a strange feeling when you first bring a baby home as well, because where was once your safe space where you can just relax is gone.
Interesting. Yeah.
You've just brought this little tiny thing of chaos into it. And I remember that feeling really, really strange. And only one person had mentioned it to me before I had my daughter, and I definitely experienced it as well. And I don't know how common it is, but yeah, the space where you used to be able to just switch off, you can't anymore. So
where becomes safe? What is that like? Does it feel like you're just completely turfed out almost? I've not thought about that.
I think when it's a home you really love as well, there were moments when I kind of resented it because there were things that needed doing. And that became difficult. Like before, I never really minded housework, and that just becomes just another thing on your to-do list. And it was one of the times I really snapped in the early days postpartum. I opened this cupboard and a box of cereal fell, and it just hit me on the head. I mean, it was cereal, it was fine. And I just saw red and I launched it across this kitchen. I can't do this anymore. And we paid for a cleaner ever since. So it is funny how things change. And speaking of the dishwasher, oh, it just woke up, sorry. Yeah, it is, it's strange. It doesn't last forever. Now I walk back through that front door and I do feel relaxed again. Adapting, yeah, it is a strange feeling in the beginning.
Obviously, we've spent an amount of time talking about fitness through pregnancy and afterwards,
Yeah.
and maybe doing things that fill your cup and getting out of the house necessarily so. You go to a women's only fitness space, don't you? And it's not like you have to be pregnant to go to that fitness space. Why did you choose that? Is there an aspect of women's only spaces that need to be experienced by women to understand the value of them? What might, say, men get wrong about them? Could we talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I moved into doing small group personal training within this women's only gym, and I moved from one-to-one PT into small group because in this season of life, fitness for me is just about keeping body strong, fit. I've got a toddler to run around after now, and having the mental space. We all know we feel mentally better after going to the gym. I wouldn't necessarily have ever said that I would want to go to a women's gym, and part of me sometimes thinks that they can be seen as, I think part of me worries sometimes about even having like women's only sections within commercial gyms. Obviously you've got things like for religious or cultural reasons, some people need that space, fine. But for someone like me that doesn't have that, the discomfort that I might experience as a woman working out around men, yes, is removed by going to a women's only space, but there's a side of me that feels frustrated with that because I'm having to remove myself to safety instead of teaching these people how to behave to make everyone feel safe. There's that. However, the women's space that I do work out in, what I do love about it is that lots of us are mothers. There's the level of understanding of we just come here, get it done within the hour with that personal trainer. You know, as women, a lot of the time we talk about mental load and all that side of it. That's removed. So it's really nice that I go in, I do as I'm told. I've got the app so I can remember what I did weights-wise last week. I've got a coach there to make sure I'm doing it right. And within an hour, I'm back out the door. Job's a good one. That's what I really love about it. And I think sometimes there can be a misconception of, well, if I went there, there might be competition between the women. At my gym, that's absolutely not the case. And I'd say go and do your research, have a look on socials at the sort of thing. Our gym is very much geared towards fitness, feeling strong, feeling empowered, blah, blah, blah. There's absolutely no aesthetic side of it. We all know our bodies are going to look better for doing it. So that's great. I'm sure there are gyms that are specifically about women's physiques. And if you're looking for that, great. So I wouldn't say there's a one size fits all with women's workout spaces either. So yeah, I think it depends what you're after and finding the right one. Going and having a go. And then not going back if you don't like it. I think that's fine.
Yeah. I think that's, everything you've said there is huge. And I think it speaks to a sense of community, to shared purpose. Yeah, and the shared purpose isn't necessarily about talking about each other's bodies. It's about the strength. It's about feeling good. It's about feeling productive. It's about working towards something. It's about being inspired by the people around you. And I sometimes wish that I was in the classes that I get to teach because of what I see people come back for, you know? I didn't get classes until I started teaching them. And I think in my current gym, there's such a cadre, like a cohort of people who love to show up just for each other as much as it is the class. Like the class almost doesn't matter. They're all there to work. They're all there to natter.
That's it. It's the community aspect of it. Yeah.
And that is, I think, something that is underrated, undervalued in fitness because of the mirrors, because of the kind of solo, I must work out in order to look like this or to achieve this goal. Actually, it's quite nice just to, as you say, have somebody tell you what to do. And sure, there might be a goal that you're working towards in that session. But for the most part, classes are about the time spent rather than the objective, from my experience.
No, and I think you've really hit the nail on the head there about removing the objective, because the numbers on my app show I'm still making progress. I'm, in fact, very proud that I'm lifting more now than I was pre-baby, so that feels fantastic. But you never walk in thinking about that. You walk in wondering how her holiday was and did they see that episode of Traitors and we needed to catch up and how was that family wedding. This is tying a lot into my favourite part about my business, isn't it? The gossip. So yeah, maybe that is what fills my cup and we're all getting the workout done at the same time. That's really nice. We don't have to be gym obsessed to go to the gym.
No. But that feeling that you describe of this space being valuable and frustrating because you have chosen to remove yourself from a generic commercial space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am sorry to hear that you have that experience. I'm sorry to hear that anybody has that experience. And I am speaking from the perspective of a PT who right now has only female clients.
Yeah.
Or, you know, people who present as women.
Yeah.
And I wonder, maybe based on what you said, is that an element of safety baked into it? So I run a run club, for instance, where it was only women showed up. And the comment made, which was a privilege to hear, but also it had this double edge to it, was when I saw that it was all women, I felt really safe. Now, obviously, I'm not a woman. I don't present that way. I'm very much a man in the space, but 8 women decided to go for a run with me clearly the person leading it. Is that like from your experience, a bridge, a sense of, well, I can train with Jack because that reduces? I don't know what that experience is like. And
it's also very dependent, isn't it? Because I've also worked out around men who don't make me feel unsafe or make me question things. Oh, I think it's just a societal thing, honestly. I think as women or someone who presents as a woman, you are always going to feel cautious around men or those that present as men, always. You don't know how they're going to behave. And they could be one of the bad ones, and so there's no way of knowing. So you will have the feeling of not necessarily being completely safe. I don't know what we can do about it.
Other than these spaces?
Yeah.
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 And that feels like it's recognising the problem and coming up with a sort of solution.
Yes.
But it's not
the
solution, really, is it? Hello. I hope, Eddie. I don't have anything.
Oh, honey.
I guess an aspect of being a parent is obviously having to bring money back in.
Yeah.
And I know that my dad took on a lot and worked long hours, but it also then meant that I didn't get to see much of my dad, which was tough. But he is so much better for him and therefore much better for the family unit when he's working. His purpose is absolutely in his work.
Yeah.
You know, he's a carer, he's a doctor, he makes people feel better. You know, even if he can't, in palliative care, like help people to be better, he at least makes them feel better.
Feel better, yeah.
And that's so important. And that is his thing, and he gets to live it every day.
Yeah.
Your drive, your ambition, I think it's obviously still there because of the things you do as well. Like, do you want to speak to that? And fierce, like for a name as much as anything else?
Yeah, so I started my business after all the lockdowns were lifted. So I was working full time, 9 to 5-ish, flexi time, but ish. And then started my business in the evenings, perhaps a Sunday morning here or there, very much as a side hustle. It was something I loved, it was creative, it was that outlet. It was also an excuse to gossip every few weeks with all the girls. As a beauty therapist, that returning client comes back with all the information every time, and I love it. In fact, that's one of my favourite things about running a beauty business. But when I was on maternity leave from both jobs, I had decided that I was only going to go back to my employed job part-time, so about 4 days a week. And I also didn't want I actually made the decision that I didn't want my business to grow anymore because I wanted one day of the week that was a day to be mum. So I have Wednesdays off with my daughter, just me and her, every single week. And that day is really precious to me. So it was all about finding balance, where it was interesting you said a big part about being a parent is to bring money in. Yes, it is, but a lot of parents choose to go back part-time once they've had a baby. And I dropped a day, so I dropped a fifth of my wage, which is a huge chunk. And not everyone chooses to do that. Not everyone is in the financial position to be able to do that. But it's about finding what works, because for me, even if I wanted to work full-time and run my business on the side, the cost of childcare would make it pretty much pointless anyway. So there are lots of different factors of the way you choose to work afterwards. My employed job I enjoy, but I do have more of the mentality of it pays the bills. And it's really nice and flexible, so I can work it around nursery runs and things. That's why I chose not to take my business full time. I had actually intended to do that at one point, be completely self-employed. But as you know, as someone who's self-employed that exchanges time for money, if you're not working, you're not earning.
Yeah.
And so for me, that just didn't make sense. So again, it's about shifting and finding what's optimal in this moment. I love running my business. I spoke briefly earlier about I don't feel like I need to take over the world or set the world alight with what I'm doing. And I think that's where I've had slight hiccups of feeling that I'm not ambitious because of that. I've had people tell me in the past, you know, because I'm fully booked in my business, and people are like, well, maybe it's time to get a big premises and start hiring some other therapists and do this, do that. And I don't need to do that. I don't need to be earning 200 grand a year.
No.
I'd rather earn less and be with my child right now. And I think there's something to be said about always considering how you're just in one season of life and it will come to an end and the next season will roll in and everything will be different. And so at the moment, I think I've decided that in this season, I am at stasis and I want to enjoy it and everything is running nice and smoothly, and that's okay. I don't need that forward movement at the moment. And I've said all this. Jake actually quit his job this week and finished, so he's now just gone fully self-employed, which is really exciting. So there is actually a part of me that wants to be the stable one for now.
Yeah.
So actually, as a family, we're not just in complete stasis. There is a big change happening. It's just not me directly. So I think that's the difference at the moment.
Which, like, that's huge. It's you've gone from your experience of it to the family experience of it, and your family is obviously an aspect of your purpose and sense of self. It's an I to a we, the collective, which is wonderful to hear. The parable, it's like a modern parable of the Thai fisherman and the American tycoon. You know it.
Yeah, you told it to me.
And that is it. Like, why would you be bigger only to not have your time with Viv now?
Exactly.
And 20 years later, then have the time, but Viv's not there.
Yeah.
You know, because
and it's a huge thing online at the moment. It's, no offense, but generally podcast wankers, isn't it? That talk about how, you know, earn all this now, work all this now, and then it's all about the retirement plan. Why? What's wrong with going out and living life in an exciting way now at the same time? Like, these things can exist alongside each other. I don't really understand this aspiration to work yourself into the ground at this point to then completely stop at another point. What if perhaps we can kind of consistently, gently work way up until we're 80? Maybe we'd feel more able to do that if we weren't, you know, grinding all the time in the beginning.
There is an amount here. I've been very lucky, but I, in that luck, want to reflect on it and appreciate it, to have been to 10 countries in the past 2.5 years and to work. But it's because my appreciation, understanding of work is enough to pay the bills, is enough to afford the lifestyle I want. It's not about possessions or ownership. It's, I need to be able to eat, I need to be able to pay for whatever place that I'm renting at the moment, because I don't have plans to own a house at the moment. And there are big pros and cons to this. You know, I don't necessarily have a base, I don't necessarily have the nest, but I do get to go to different places and have like the mini retirements almost. You know, the things that people will grind for, as you say, but won't get to enjoy until 20 years down the line, when the knees have gone, as Pets described it when we were in Mexico. It's just, my knees are there. My lower back's giving me jip, but my knees are good for now. And so, I think because I've scaled down what I think wealth is, I've got maybe a wealthier sense of life for it, if that makes sense.
I think it all comes down to comparison. We live completely different lives, and yet we're so similar. And we both feel lucky and wealthy in our lives, and they're completely different to one another. And we can sit here and converse about it and not try to correct each other or change the direction that each of us is going in. And I think so much of the time you pull up social media and you just think, oh, maybe that's what I should want. Or it's someone telling you that that's what you should want. Or it's a trend, like, oh, you're in your soft girl era. What does that even mean? And why does it have to be labelled and titled and be something else that you now need to do?
Even what you described of Jake telling you to go out and do the thing that normally brings you joy. A lot of what I face, it's constant tension. I'll get people show me other fat loss coaches online who make 10 grand a month and look at their transformation photos and try doing this video, try doing this carousel. It's just, what they're doing is amazing for what they're trying to do. but I don't want to be the fat loss coach. And when I see stuff like that, I feel this lack where I didn't have it before. I like the holistic stuff.
Yeah.
I like that fat loss could be a phase of your life, and I like that being strong could be a phase, and I like that being pregnant could be a phase, and I like that I don't know about soft girl era. I'm not going to say that that's a phase, but you know that it is phasic, that there are necessarily chapters because things change all the time.
All the time.
But if there is something that you enjoy that fills your cup, do that, and actually maybe check yourself if things don't feel good and you say, oh, but you know, I was just being kind to myself. Or I think being kind to yourself is looking after yourself in a way that fills your cup. It's not doing the thing.
Yeah.
It's not going for the walk. It's not eating a way that you would be okay with tomorrow. You know, it's living in a way that you tomorrow will be happy with.
That's it. And I had a really similar discussion with my sister-in-law the other day, who said, I just can't fit it all in. I said, what do you mean? She was like, yeah, well, a bit of yoga in the morning and some journaling and drinking my green tea before I touch a coffee and doing 10,000 steps. And I bought a walking pad because I've also got to work 8 hours a day. And She goes, I'm tired. And I said, well, then it's not really working, is it? And I think the wellness industry can be so tricky because I gratitude journal, but I don't do it every day. And I don't let that stop me from doing it. And it doesn't have to be done every single day to be effective. It's just finding what works for you and having the courage to trust yourself in that, I think, sometimes is what's hard.
Yeah, but we can't sell that and we can't give it to people. They have to go through it to know it.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
Yeah, it is.
This has been sat on the table for a little while. I think it's just out of shot. It's Mr. Miracle, a DC comic. I wasn't into comics before this year, and I was put onto Absolute Martian Manhunter. What a title that is. And it's like this noir detective novel, and he's wearing the trilby and he's smoking his cigarettes, and we then see him in a scene where he's coughing. And I'm like, oh, is he coughing because of the cancer from smoking all of his cigarettes? And it's not explained initially, but when he looks up from his coughing fit, he can see steam coming off people that's different coloured. And it's like the colour of your hair, basically.
Yeah.
Like some people are coughing up orange or pink or bright greens or whatever. It's so psychedelic all of a sudden. And he doesn't know what he's looking at. He can just see this smoke coming off people.
Right.
And then we later understand that he's got this influence of a Martian on him.
Okay.
And the Martian sees things that he doesn't.
Yeah.
And wow, like what a way to see the world. And there's this bit on one page where it says, hold it up to the light to understand what's going on. And we don't get that anymore. This is like such a subtopic, but it's really like got me back into reading in a way that I didn't expect. Using a physical format, you hold it up to the light and you can see the Martian superimposed or underimposed on our guy, on the main character. So he's literally in his head. It's just by virtue of a page, you know?
That's so cool.
Which is wonderful. And from that, I enjoyed it so much that I went on to Mr. Miracle. I think it's the same writer or it's the same cartoonist or illustrator. Mr. Miracle basically can escape anything. That's his talent. For whatever reason, he can escape anything.
Okay.
And I think there are a couple of moments where he's basically just ahead and he still escapes. But part of his escape thing, as somebody who identifies as a recovering avoidant personality, you know, kind of in relationships and all of that, is that, you know, when things are good, we'll also try to escape. You know, when things feel too perfect, sometimes there's like a pressure on it. And I think what's really nice about Mr. Miracle, this guy who can escape anything, by the end of it, he's sat on a sofa with his kid and he's literally got his feet up on the devil and he doesn't need to run away from it anymore. And the devil can't do anything to stop him. He's already conquered everything. And that is it. That it's such a perfect picture of his feet up on the thing that other people would run away from.
Yeah.
You know, he's kind of brought it all together. And when you said that at the wedding, it felt a little bit like this is somebody who has conquered demons and fought through trials and is here now to just enjoy it.
Yeah. And that the devil's still there. There are always going to be difficulties, aren't there? And I think maybe it's just knowing that I have got such a solid community around me. You know, my little family unit here, our extended family unit, friends that I can tell anything completely uninhibited to specifically, and I think that's all you need. You know, I don't think you need 50 million really close friends. As long as you've got those people to pull you through, It'll all be okay. And you can just enjoy it. In fact, my closest friend, we have a saying when shit hits the fan, and it's that everything comes out in the wash. You've just got to survive the spin cycle. And sometimes we'll look at each other and go, we're in the fucking spin cycle, but it'll come out in the wash. You've just got to get through it, and we'll drag each other through.
Love that.
Yeah.
Lottie, this has been class. Where would you want to send people from here? Whether it's to something you've read or to what you're interested in, your business, where should they go?
I think... Oh, what would be useful? Okay, so we've not talked about it directly, but it links in really nicely to what we were saying, is there's a sort of lifestyle framework, if you like, called the 4 C's, that stands for community, cavorting, consumption, and creating or creation. And it's how all of your hobbies, and I talked about it in Finding Balance, should hit those 4 things. So creating for the sake of it, having a community, cavorting, so moving your body, and consuming someone else's art, whether it be a comic or a trip to the theatre or watching a film, whatever. That's a really nice one to go and look at and see how many of the 4 C's you think you're hitting in your life, and whether one might be a bit lacking and might help you feel a little bit more full. I think that's nice. I mean, you can check out my business page if you want, but my books are full. I'm Fierce Studios, Sheffield, and you can find me on Instagram. And my brilliant coach, who coached me through fertility and pregnancy and has continued to do so, she owns a gym in Sheffield called Enhance. That is Enhance Coaching Sheffield, and her name is Hannah, and she's brilliant.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lottie.
Eddie, will you come and sit down at least?
Will you come this
Come
way?
on, it's very friendly.
Hello. Hello.
That's nice.
I would love it if you told me in a comment what you enjoy, what you agreed with, what you disagreed with, what you felt we could have gone deeper into, and what you'd like from the show, or the newsletter, or me next. All of this grows with your input. So leaving a like is better than nothing at all. A comment with some feedback would be amazing, and subscribing to let me know that you believe in the project. Outside of that, for here, right now, I appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this one, do check out what comes next. Next up, I'll see you in the next one.